Hi, welcome to the Run Before You Walk podcast. I'm Stephen.
I'm Matt.
And today we're going to do a second episode on how to know that you're succeeding, how to measure success with online ministry.
So Stephen, our church has been completely digital for over a year.
Okay.
And now we're moving into hybrid ministry in the next few weeks.
Right.
And I'm wondering, how can I know that our church is being successful digitally?
Yeah, right. And I think a lot of our churches are in that situation, right? We sort of have some sense of what success looked like in person. And we talked about that in our last episode. We shared some thoughts on that. And in fact, our last episode, I think, provides a framework for us to process that. Now that we're moving, most of our churches are moving to hybrid ministry. So just as a reminder, we had these 5 stages, right?
Yeah, the 5 stages.
Right. So the first stage in this discipleship strategy is some people are just not interested in religion. That's stage 1. Okay. Stage 2 is people who are maybe spiritually curious, but would not consider themselves a Christian. Stage 3 is folks who would call themselves a Christian, but as you get to know them in a pastoral way, you realize there's not a lot of, they're not being a disciple very much. They're not really changing their life much. It's easiest to understand a 3 by comparing it to a 4, because a 4 is someone who thinks of themselves as a Christian and is actively engaged in their own discipleship. They're actively doing stuff in their life to become more like who Jesus probably wants them to be. And then stage 5 is someone who's turned around and is leading others in discipleship as well.
So here's the thing.
Okay.
So I went through the last episode with you.
Right, you were there.
I've been to seminary.
Uh-huh.
I'm still not sure how to tell a 1, a 2, a 5, a 12 in terms of digital ministry. What is it?
Right. In person, you can get a pretty good sense of it.
Absolutely. I know Mr. Smith. I know Mrs. Jones. I know kind of where they are as their pastor. Yeah. Now, digitally, maybe I don't even know these people.
That's right. Right. Exactly.
So how can I? Let's just maybe go through. How can I know a 1? How can I know what am I doing here?
Yeah, what you're doing here is you're taking the core way you apply this model and you're just pivoting it to online. So the way you actually apply this model in practice, even in person, is at each stage, you need to have a few markers that you're keeping an eye out for. Okay. I heard someone say one time, it might have been Reggie Joyner. I think it was somebody over at the Orange Group in, was that Atlanta? Anyway, they said that sometimes the best way to measure an individual's discipleship, they were talking about youth ministry at the time, but an individual's discipleship is the gut of their small group leader. And I think that applies in a church. Okay. Sometimes the best way to know if somebody is a 3 or a 4, there's markers, but the best sense of whether someone is a 3 or a 4 sometimes is their pastor's gut. Okay. Like, sometimes it's hard to nail this down. In spite of that, there are still some things that are general guidelines. Generally, if someone is going to a Bible study midweek, generally if someone is donating at a high level, like approaching a tithe or something like that, generally if someone is asking the pastor biblical questions in the middle of the week, that's generally a sign of a 4, right?
Or higher.
Or maybe higher. Well, that's true. Maybe higher.
Yeah.
And so when you're thinking about how do I get Mr. Smith from a 3 to a 4, you're keeping an eye out for 3 or 4 of these markers, right? We do the same thing online.
Okay.
We do the same thing.
So let's actually just start with a 1.
Okay.
What's a digital 1 look like?
Okay. So if you're thinking about what happens when a 1 engages with our online ministry, let's assume you've got some sort of online worship service. Maybe you've got a couple social media accounts. Well, what is a person who's not spiritually, not even interested in religion? Okay. What is it going to look like for them to actually be making progress with your particular church? Well, frankly, very, very little. Frankly, if they liked an Instagram post that was maybe not even a particularly religious Instagram post, maybe you post an inspirational quote and they like that. Mm-hmm. Frankly, for a 1, that's a step.
That's huge.
That's a big step, yeah. Right? Yeah. So stuff like 1s.
Basically any engagement.
Any engagement.
Any engagement is a huge
Absolutely.
move. But now, a two. So this is someone who isn't necessarily against religion. They're kind of like interested. What's some progress look like for that person?
Yeah, so I think you would look. I would look for things like maybe they're engaging at a deeper level. Maybe they're more actively engaging with you notice the religious, the more overtly spiritual posts your church is making. They're engaging with that. Maybe they're commenting and sharing some of their thoughts. That would be a big step,
That would
right?
be huge.
Some of these steps are small, some of these steps are big. That'd be a bigger step.
And maybe they shared their story.
Oh my gosh, if they reached out personally, even if it was in a digital form, that would be a monumental step.
Okay. So, but now we have people who are threes, and for the purposes of this, we're going to pretend they have not been to our in-person church.
Okay, just for clarity's sake.
Just for clarity's sake, for this, like someone's been coming to our digital ministry, have never been on our property. Maybe they don't even live in the same zip code or state.
Right.
What is moving a three along? A digital three? How do we move a digital three along?
So you're going to want to be doing things like churches should be doing online, where you're trying to reach out and cultivate relationships with these individuals. So at some point you've gotten the sense this person's a three. Well, the truth is, most of our churches are pretty good at threes. You're probably wanting to nudge them towards maybe one-on-ones with the pastor, maybe online Bible studies, maybe if your church does small groups, things like that, you try to get them engaged kind of in the same way you would do in person. Yeah.
Okay, so now thinking about it that way, like the gentle call toward being a four, now that we have a four, this is a person who's coming to our Zoom Bible study.
Yeah.
This is a person who's coming weekly to worship, checking in, saying, hi, everybody, it's me, Susie, whatever it is. Now that we have that person, they're involved in some way, how do you move that four to a five?
Are we still assuming they've
never been on the property?
Okay. I think in that situation, you've got this online worship community that's sort of developing. I think you want to encourage this four to take some sort of leadership and discipleship role in your online community. Maybe you have them start to lead a small group. Maybe you have Zoom small groups that meet at different times through the week or things like that. Or you encourage them to get involved in something, maybe in their local
some sort of
community.
outreach ministry in their community?
Sure. All the sorts of things that reflect that someone is trying to help others grow to be more like Jesus,
So one of the biggest shifts I'm hearing is that not everything has to funnel through our buildings anymore.
Oh man, that's so huge. Yeah, it's not, and I think we talked about this in an earlier episode. Churches have different strategies for this, but I really think it's wise for us to lean into that idea. It's not necessarily about the building anymore. Now, if it is, if some of these folks are engaging online and then they start to attend in person, well, that's great.
Well, great. We're not going to say no.
Yeah, who would say no?
Who's saying no?
That's great. But even if they stay online, as we've talked about in other episodes, there is real community that happens in an entirely online thing, right?
So obviously there's going to be a lot of individual cultivation in your own context in your communities, but that's where we're going to start for today. That's our podcast, Run Before You Walk. I'm Matt.
I'm Stephen.
We'll see you next time.